individualism and instant gratification that's fed to them the other 15 hours of the day. I teach them that African people are a communal people, that Africans respect their elders. So he lays out a basic foundation, and he incorporated this conversation in his book, which means that this conversation had meaning and value to him. What's important in this description of coming into Asante's office, he describes the poster on the wall with the African kings and queens. You all have seen those posters, haven't you? The Budweisers, great kings and queens of Africa, all right? And what's so interesting about it is that I remember in the conversation I had with Dr. Clark, Dr. Johnny Clark, years ago, Dr. Clark had shared with me that he wrote the narrative for those posters. And as he was discussing that with some of his colleagues ragged on him for being associated with Budweiser. Now, you know Budweiser, I mean, they producing this alcohol that's killing our people. And Dr. Clark said, well, listen, fool, our people gonna drink the Budweiser anyway. So we might as well give them something to learn while they're drinking the Bud. That's real. That is real. And I can't tell you how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives were touched by those posters. You don't understand the extent to which something small, something seemingly insignificant and anti-African can plant seeds in the minds of someone, whether they are conscious of it or not. And so we've got to begin to look at our situation from multiple perspectives before we start criticizing our people for what they do. A couple of other passages in the book, Barak describes his journey to Africa to visit his father's relatives after his father died. Now, the book begins with him receiving a phone call from his sister in Africa that his father died in a car accident. Now, Barak only knew his father for 1 month. His father met his wife when they were students at the University of Hawaii. He got pregnant, he lived with them for about 2 years, and then he left, returned to Africa. He didn't come back until Barak was about 10 for Christmas, stayed for a month, and then he was gone again and never saw his father again. So he spends this book, dreaming about his father. Because everyone said how bright his father was. Everyone talked about how much character and how he could walk into a room and just change the energy in the room with his presence. And so he tried to imagine the presence, the power of this man. He tried to imagine that power manifesting itself in him as he tried to find his place in the world. And then there's a description here where he finally goes to Kenya to visit his father's relatives and to go to his father's grave. And there's an interesting conversation that takes place when he's in the airport in Nairobi. His baggage is lost. And so he meets with the teller to fill out the form to secure his luggage. And let me just read you this short passage, which again gives you some insight into the mind of this man. He said, I completed the form and gave Miss Omoro, and gave it back to Miss Omoro, who gave it the once-over before looking back at me. She said, you wouldn't be related to Dr. Obama by chance? He said, well, yes, he was my father. Miss Omoro smiled sympathetically. I'm very sorry about his passing. Your father was a close friend of my family's, and he would come often to our house when I was a child. He said, the very fact that she recognized my name, that had never happened before, I realized. Not in Hawaii, not in Indonesia, not in LA or New York or Chicago. For the first time in my life, I felt the comfort, the firmness of identity that a name might provide, and how it might carry an entire history in other people's memories, so that they might nod and say knowingly, oh, you're so-and-so's son. No one here in Kenya would ask how to spell my name or mangle it with an unfamiliar tongue. My name belonged, and so I belong, drawn into a web of relationships, alliances, and grudges that I did not yet understand. So it's about finding self. and appreciating those little things that we take for granted, those little things that we aren't even conscious of, that help to ground you in a greater sense of self than we can ever imagine. Even the title of the book is significant. The book is entitled Dreams from My Father, a story of race and inheritance. Dreams from my father. Not dreams of my father, but dreams from my father. And as a graphic artist, as I look at the cover of the book, I noticed that in the design of the book, all of the words are initial caps, except from, which is in all lowercase. So this was designed in order to draw your attention to the word from, so that you can understand on a very basic and fundamental level, he is not dreaming of his father, he is tapping into the ancestral memory of his father. All right? Understand what is here. It's hard to see it if your mind is filled with hatred, or if your mind is filled with confusion. It's hard to see reality if you're blinded by other issues. And so it's important to realize that we have to look at this man on several different levels. There's another passage in the book that I'd like to share with you that again deals with this issue of identity and also reinforces this quest for a black man to find his father, to identify with positive aspects of his father. This next passage I want to read to you is a conversation between Barack and one of his co-workers, a brother named Johnny. And in this particular passage, Johnny is talking about his father. So here's a black man talking about his father. And I want you to listen to this discussion, because it's an apt description of how most black men feel about their fathers. He says here, Johnny says, it's funny, he said, how listening to Asante back there made me think about my old man. And then he goes on to talk about his father. He said, never seemed like he really enjoyed life. You know what I mean? On weekends, he'd just hang around the house with some of my uncles, and they would come over and drink and listen to music. They complained about what their bosses had done to them this week. The man did this. The man did that. But if one of them actually started talking about something different or had a new idea, the rest of them would tear the guy up. How some no-count nigga like you gonna start some business, one of them would say. And then somebody else would say, take that glass away from Jimmy. That wine done gone to his head. And they all be laughing. But I could tell that they weren't really laughing inside. Sometimes if I were around, my uncles started talking about me. Hey boy, that's some knobby head you got there. Hey boy, you starting to sound just like the white man with all those big words. Johnny blew a steam of smoke into the hazy air. When I was in high school, I felt ashamed of him, my old man, I mean, working like a dog, sitting there getting drunk with his brothers. I swore that I would never end up like that. But you know, when I thought about it later, I realized that my old man never laughed when I talked about wanting to go to college. I mean, he never said anything one way or the other, but he always made sure that me and my brother got up for school, and that we didn't have to work, and that we had a little walking around money. The day that I graduated, I remember he showed up in a jacket and a tie and just shook my hand. That's all. He just shook my hand, and then he went back to work. So Barack says to him, but he was there, Johnny. Who? Your father. He was there for you. Yeah, Barack, I guess he was. Did you ever tell him that? No, we're not really good at talking. Johnny looked at the window, and then he turned to me. Maybe I should, huh? Yeah, John, I said, nodding. Maybe you should. All right? Black men, searching to find identity, searching to find relationships with other black men, particularly the most important black man in your life, your father. But too many black men don't have fathers, don't know their fathers. So I want you all to understand very clearly that without that 50% of yourself, you are not whole. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much education you have. You are not whole. So in this book, he talks about trying to complete himself, trying to get whole. And he did that by trying to find his roots, something that many of us can't do by virtue of the fact that many of us don't know where in Africa our foreparents came from. But he was fortunate in that he was able to go to the village, see his grandparents, go to his grandfather's tomb, and participate in the rituals that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. The third point I want to look at is the significance of Obama as America's first obviously black president. And in doing so, I want to do a quick overview